Let's talk about it Sunday, y'all. Happy Sunday. Welcome to Move Mountains and Break Barriers, Season 3. Let's get this show started.
They counting this out. Just check the history. Know that the system can't stop us. The paper they count came from the blood, sweat, and tears of our people. The pivot, scream greatness and shout. Hate our existence, but really, yet truly, we hold all the power, no route. Brace yourselves when we amount, cause we limitless. DNA royal, not menaces. Know that we limitless. Brothers and sisters in arms, so the power be limitless. DNA royal, not menaces.
This show represents the opinions of the host and his guests. The content here should not be taken solely as medical advice. This show is for informational purposes only. Please consult your healthcare provider or professional for additional information and follow-up.
My skin and the joy make them 1% matter. That fact that matter. Open your eyes when you look at the mirror and see what I see.
Well, happy Sunday, y'all. It is Sunday, March the 12th, 2023. My name is Thomas Davis, LPC, LCPC, and I'm so super excited to have you here on this cold, chilly night here in the DMV. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Please like and share this broadcast. Tag a friend, tag a coworker, invite someone in this show tonight because we're going to have a very diverse conversation and we're going to do a lot of talking and discussing communication. But before we go into the discussion, I want to say this first. To our ladies, happy International Women's Day, Women's Month. Without you ladies, we would not be who we are. Thank you for being those strong women, those strong leading ladies, and never forget you are important. We are excited. I'm humbled. Shout out to the leading ladies in my life. Shout out to the ladies, period. We love you and never stop doing what you're doing. But before we go into the show, I want you to know that I truly appreciate everything that you do, your comments, your emails, your text messages, your words of encouragement, because again, this is not about Thomas, it's about how we as one can move those mountains and break those barriers. But before we go into the show, I want us to talk about ways that you can continue to support us, ways that you can follow us, ways that you can just stay engaged with us. You can follow us on Instagram, which is Limitless Outcomes. You can also follow us on our YouTube channel, which is Limitless Possibilities LLC. Shout out to our new subscribers. Thank you so much for supporting. Facebook, Limitless Possibilities, as well as LinkedIn, Thomas Davis LPC. Again, thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to build up our text community because we want to start sending out motivational text messages monthly, daily, weekly. And we want to make sure that you stay engaged when you're not on the show. So please text TALK, TALK, to 844-549-1369. Thank you again. For those who are watching the replay, I thank you in advance. Please enjoy the show. We hope to see your comments, and we want to make sure that you are appreciated for watching the replay. All right, y'all. Let us know that you're here. Let us know where you are watching from. We want to make sure that we see your comments. For those who watched part 1 and part 2 last month, it was dynamic. Your feedback matters, and we are so appreciative. I'm so appreciative to all of the love that you continue to show. But tonight, I just want to talk about just communication, y'all. We're just going to talk about the benefits of communication. We're going to be talking about some catfishing. We're going to be talking about that verbal versus nonverbal communications. And we're going to talk about how do we find ourselves in a situation that we know we should have never been in through nonverbal communication. So I'm just super excited to have the theme of let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. And this is very key, y'all. Consistency and communication, y'all, is really everything. We have to be consistent. We have to communicate because it is everything that matters as we grow in life. Another quote that I have is from Dr. King. People fail to get along because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they have not communicated with each other. Powerful quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Sometimes we have conversations via text. We have conversations via the smartphones and Android. Shout out to my Android users. And we don't really know the person because we never picked up the phone and had a simple conversation by saying hello. All right, y'all. How many of us are like springing forward but springing tired? That extra hour matters. So as you know, we are springing forward, and we're going to spring forward with our communication. And we hope that everyone has had the opportunity to set their clocks 1 hour ahead, because it is not 6:06, y'all. It is 7:06 p.m. on the dot. Hey, that sounds like an Usher rap. Hey, Miss Penny Davis, thank you so much for watching tonight. I love you, Mom. But let's jump right into this topic, because I want to give the panelists opportunity to freely share, and we can get through the show within the hour. All right, there are a few definitions that I want to really talk about. The first definition is communication. Communication is defined as the imparting or exchanging of information or news. Communication methods, y'all. How many of you all know what communication methods that you use the most? Throw it in the chat. How do you communicate? Verbal, hello, nonverbal, text messages, written, writing a note. Listening, we listening with our ears. And visual communication is that our eyes discuss and shares how we feel or what we're thinking. Which communication skills and methods do you use the most? Drop it in the chat. Another communication that we're going to talk about is catfishing. Yeah. Catfishing is defined as the process of luring someone into a relationship by means of a fictional online persona, being someone that you're not. And the last definition is scamming. One who does any and everything within his or her power to steal from another, usually by the means of trickery, deceit, and force. So someone says, what do all of these definitions have to do with let's talk about it? When we are not communicating, we find ourselves in situations to where we are scammed. And I'm not just talking about scams in relationships. Scams when someone picks up the phone and call you and says, hey, you owe $429 and you have to pay this within 2 hours, or someone's going to come knocking at your door. Or catfishing, when you are out here trying to meet someone and you see someone, and next thing you know, that picture that you see, and when you go to that restaurant, you're like, whoa, who is this? So those are some examples of what we're going to be discussing tonight, as well as healthy communications within your friendships, your relationships, working on your jobs, all of these different areas within life. We want to empower each other to increase our communication. And there is one last quote before we go into the panel that I want to throw up. And this is this, y'all. Electric communication would never be a substitute for the face of someone with their souls, encourages another person to be brave and true. We got to stop using all electronic modes of communication. We have to stop. We got to get back to what we know. Back in my days, and I'm going to tell my year, back in the 80s, we had beepers. You beat me, I picked up the phone, and I called you. And we had a conversation. But now we want to do video chats and Snapchats and videos, which is all great. But we also have to use that simple verbal communication. All right, so I've talked enough. Now it's time to bring on my dynamic panelists. I'm excited to have on all y'all Black entrepreneurs who are doing their thing within their respective areas, respective professions, respective careers, and relationships. Y'all, we have a dynamic panel tonight, and I cannot wait to introduce the song. But remind us of others, Miss Shaditra Robinson. She's going to come on right quick, and we're going to have a great discussion. What's up, Shaditra?
They counting this out. Just check the history, know that.
Hey, how's everyone doing?
Hey, Thomas, how are you?
Amazing, amazing. Happy Sunday. How are
Same
you?
to you.
You
I'm
good?
good. I'm
Are you
good.
ready to talk about it?
I am. This is a
Let's-
subject that is warranted right now.
All right. So let's keep this on. Aisha, come on real quick.
They counting this out. Just check the history, know that.
What's up, Aisha? How are you?
I'm great. How are you today?
I am amazing. Thank you so much for joining me on a Sunday evening. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to do this to you because you guys are our ladies. Happy International Women's Appreciation Day, month, year, all of it. I salute you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to bring
Thank
both of the
you.
fellas on. Thank you. I'm going to bring both of the fellas on so we can hop into our discussion. I'm going to bring on Mr. Pernell Bush and Mr. Damil Betts.
They counting this out. Just check the history, know that the system.
What's up, fellas? What's up, brothers?
What's going on with you?
Hey, what's up,
Having
boys?
us on.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Doing well.
Good. Good to see y'all, and thank you all for being on tonight. I am excited about the rich discussion that you all are going to bring tonight, and I humbly, truly thank you so much for your time. So let's jump into this discussion. So I thought about how can we continue to move mountains and break barriers. And one of the major barriers that I feel that many of us, sometimes self-included, we have is communication. Communication sometimes can be what I think someone should know that other person may not necessarily know. And sometimes I find myself thinking, well, shouldn't they know that? There was a young lady that I admire so much, and we was talking about the show. She was like, you got a show tonight? I said, yeah, baby. I think I told you that. And she was like, you didn't communicate. And so I had to say to you, you're right. And sometimes when we don't communicate, we have to do something, and that's called own our lack of communication. So I had to publicly say, sweetheart, thank you so much for holding me accountable and reminding me that I did not communicate like I thought that I did. All right, y'all. So one of the other things that I do want to take away from this show, and I would like for our listening audience to take away, is ways that we can improve interactions, communications, being consistent, being aware of false ideologies, being aware of scammers. And I want us to really have a rich conversation. Are y'all ready?
Sound like a plan. Let's get it.
Let's do it. All right. So tonight's discussion is centered around the word power of communication. What resonates with you as you think of those words, power and communication? And I'm going to start with you, Ms. Robinson.
That's a very powerful question to say, power and communication. But of course, we come out with communicating. That's the best form of us trying to get our point across, because of course we're in our own heads. But in order for us to get out what we want to the world, right, we have to communicate that. And that's powerful. A lot of us, like I said, we sit in our thoughts. And when we do have the opportunity to share, we have a lot to say. Those that really do take the time to evaluate what's going on around the world and be able to share. So it is powerful to have communication.
Love that. Mr. Bush, come and talk to us, brother. What resonates with you when you think about communication and that word power?
Well, when I think about power is the ability to influence change and behaviors, right? To influence people and behaviors. And I think about communication was just the exchange of information. So it's interesting because no matter where we are, we all communicate differently. Like I communicate differently with my homeboys than I probably do with my children. I communicate differently with my significant other than I probably do with my colleagues. So we have to understand the modality of communication that we're utilizing and how that information is going to be received and exchanged in the form of communication that we're utilizing for that method.
Love that. Aisha, come talk to us, sweetheart.
So really similarly, I was going to say the same thing with code switching. When we go from our professional settings to dealing with our children to dealing with our friends, we have so much power in our communication by the tone of our communication. So it could just be this switch in how high your energy is and how low your energy is,
Mm-hmm.
but being very direct and purposeful in what you're saying is also really
Mm-hmm.
important with that power behind your
Mm-hmm.
communication.
I love that. I love that.
Hmm.
Damil, talk to us, sir.
Yeah, so when I hear the words power, I think the first thing that comes to mind is responsibility. And the more power that you have, the more responsibility that you obtain. And the word communication is, I think that it comes in the form of having the ability to not only express yourself in the good times, but having the ability to express yourself when it's extremely hard and you haven't been there before.
Right. I love that. And thinking about the communication methods, and whether it's verbal, nonverbal, written, or expressions overall, working in the current professions that I do work in, one being the academia world and the other being in the land of therapy. One of the things that I think sometimes we as individuals we lack is communication. I think sometimes in our relationships and our interactions, we make that assumption, which is in a therapy land, is called the faulty assumption that that person is supposed to know what I'm thinking. That person is supposed to know how I feel about things. But the next question that I really want us to really have a deep discussion on is, have we truly lost the method and the true meaning of communication in 2023? If
Nah,
so, why? Pernell, talk to us.
I don't think we lost it. I just think we have so many different methods of communication that we have to ensure how we're communicating with people in our lives. That method that we're utilizing is interpret the same way that you meant for it to be interpreted by the people that you're communicating with. Right. So I don't think we lost it. It's just
Mm-hmm.
the form that we're used to have decreased. Right. The main form of communication once upon a time was us talking directly to one another.
Right.
All right. But now we're talking directly to one another through devices more so. And through other methods such as text messaging, FaceTiming. So all these things, I don't think it has decreased. I just think it has our capabilities have increased, and we still have
Right.
to learn how to utilize that more efficiently.
I like that. I like that. I like that. Talk to us, Aisha.
Yeah, I think it just has to remain purposeful. When communication is purposeful, the we're trying to convey always be important. And so because sometimes you can impact a lot of people via social media, which was
Mm,
not a norm in past,
right.
just our old worlds. But as long as we're being purposeful in our meaning and what we're trying to communicate, we can do it over text message. You could, like our 800 number, you're going to be able to reach thousands of people with your motivational text just
Right.
because they sent you one text to say they're interested. So as
Mm-hmm.
long as we're purposeful, I feel like we won't lose the true meaning.
Love that. Love that. Shadisha, talk to us.
I agree, the way that things have expanded and evolved and just taking advantage of them. But I still think, the old way, picking up the telephone and reaching out to someone, but the ways that we have evolved into now, as spoken about in the conversation with the FaceTime, with the text messages, you
Mm,
can get to a more massive amount of people in just one setting. But purpose, when it comes to really staying connected with someone, that we have to make sure we're mindful of that. And I think it just goes back to one of the conversations we had before. When you're
mm-hmm.
speaking to someone, just still not just a drive by. It's like when we're asking how you doing, it's like make sure you're going to provide and dedicate the time to really ask that person how they're doing and be ready to hear them.
Love that. Love that. Damil, come talk to us, sir.
I think this is tricky. I think that we have a blend of generations that are used to different types of communication, and then when we blend them all together, it's a little different. So I would say we haven't lost it. I think it is evolving. I think that it becomes very interpersonal or very non-personal, especially when it comes to text messaging,
Mm-hmm.
because people can interpret any kind of tone that they want to from a text, and that is extremely
Mm,
hard. I think that it is very hard for people to pick up a phone
mm-hmm.
because it also requires them to use their emotions, and it also requires them to actually use their voice, and you can hear it, you can talk to them, and that's kind of hard. So I think that the actual meaning of communication, I don't think that we lost. I think the type of communication that we're seeking has definitely changed. And I don't think that everybody has the same communication. And especially with how easy it is for people to block you, um,
Right.
not put you out so you can't even say anything. Like
Right.
they control when you can say, and that's kind of tough.
Right. Right. So while I have you here, sir, why do you think personally that communication is essential and important?
In one phrase, I can say a closed mouth don't get fed. So
Mm,
if you don't open your mouth for anything that you need or express yourself, no one can really show up for you. No one can help you. People don't know what you need. And unless, you use sign language, which is a different kind of conversation,
right.
you need to be able to express yourself. But I think a lot of that stems from my own personal experiences and childhood trauma, where you're not used to being heard. You're not used to being
Mm,
having to have a voice. So when
right.
your voice gets shut down as a kid, you grow up to be this adult thinking that, oh, nobody's going to hear me anyway.
Mm,
And I think that in turn pushes people. But I feel like communication is the one way that we can bridge the gap, because if we teach people how to use their words and really know the power of their tongue and the
right.
things they're saying, you will seek to be understood. I mean, you will
Right.
seek to understand, not more so much of trying to just like understand me, understand me, understand me.
Right. Parnell, one of the things that I've been watching, as I said to you in the green room, you are doing amazing work in the community in which you are residing and living. Shout out to you, first of all, for the great work that you are not just doing in your practice, but you're taking your words and your actions and you're going out into the communities. What have you observed about being able to effectively communicate needs, emotions, thoughts, and feelings?
Man, honestly, once again, it's really getting back to the basis of ensuring the people that you're communicating with and you're trying to, for lack of better terms, deliver effective communication to them, right? So everybody you communicate different. We all receive information differently.
Right.
Certain words in one place maybe mean something somewhere else. You know what I mean? So like down here, if I say cuz in Florida, it might actually be one of my cousins. Say cuz in California, I
Right.
might be in the wrong neighborhood saying the wrong thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So really ensuring that we are in a place to effectively to communicate what we're trying to get across to the
Right.
population that we're serving, and also like I taught my class today, when someone's communicating with you, reinterpret the meaning that you got from that,
Mm.
right? So so I tell my class, yo, talk back. What I mean by that, talk back to me when I'm telling you something. I want you to hear. I want you to reinterpret what you just heard me say,
Right.
right? Because
Right.
you may not have taken it the way that I thought you should take, or you may not understood it the way that I communicated it. So
Right.
it's really for us being like, we have to still be flexible. We have to be understanding that we all come from different backgrounds, different lived experiences, and words can mean differently. And when I'm communicating with individuals, I just try to meet everyone where they are.
Love that. I love that. You dropped some knowledge, and I'm over here taking notes. You said flexibility and understanding. Those are key characteristics and key components when we are communicating. And we got to understand the person that's in front of us, because the way that I communicate with Shaditra may be different than how I communicate with Aisha. So I thank you. I thank you so much for dropping those nuggets. Shaditra, same question. Why do you think, for you within your role, that we have to understand the importance of communication?
Because you want to make sure that you're getting your point across
Right,
effectively,
right,
because it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So leading back to what we were talking about before about the tone, if I'm saying something and my tone is off or I'm yelling, it's
right,
not going to get across to the person the way that I effectively.
right,
So you have to be mindful about who the audience, where you are, and then sometimes even just taking a breather and listen, because when you can just allow that person the moment to what you said, but allow them to process it. And that's another thing we get away from. We just continue to just keep talking and not allowing the person to process and then have the conversation.
right, right. There's a comment that Justin has, and I'm going to come back to that question. I mean, to that comment when we go into the relationship around text messages. But I'm gonna leave that one right there. But Aisha, talk to us, sweetheart. Like, why do you think it's so important for us to really understand the true meaning of communication within your role as a therapist?
Just freeze. I think she froze up.
Okay, I think she froze up. All right, we'll come back to her. So I do want to piggy on back, and so I will answer that question. So as a therapist, sometimes we find ourselves communicating and interacting with many clients, and one of the things that Pernell said that I do is check for understanding. He says talk back. And so what I say in my sessions is so I can understand and know that you know exactly what I'm saying. Can you tell me what this means to you? Because I think sometimes in relationships, sometimes in sessions, sometimes when we're interacting with people, we walk away thinking that that person actually knows exactly what I'm saying. That sometimes we got to just slow it down a little bit and just seek to understand and say, yo, what did I just say? Or what did you take from this conversation? And I think that is very key and very, very key. All right, so let's go to the 7 C's, y'all. The 7 C's of communication are clarity, correctness, courtesy, concreteness, consideration, and completeness. Why do you think this is important? Yo, this right here is going to open up the discussions around relationships, friendships, interacting on your jobs. Why do we think, y'all, because you all are the experts, that it is important for us to be clear, correct, have some courtesy with our communication, be concrete in what we're saying, be considerate of others, and complete the sentence? Starting with you, Shaditra.
It's extremely important to have the 7 C's, because when you think about, of course we're talking about communication, but I'm thinking about, like, say if you're writing a paper, you have the opening, what it's going to be about, what the body's about, and closing it out. So of
Right.
course having these 7 C's leads you the same way, because of course even if you're not saying anything and someone walks away, you want to make sure that what you are communicating, whether it be verbally or in written, that they're going to get it. So I always say having clarity is definitely very important, but I'm going to go back to what I was saying before, the tone. So the
Right.
courtesy, it's like not what you say, it's how you say it. And I think when you're communicating with someone, and of course we're going to lead into relationships, and of course the code switching, because of course we all work with clients and we
Right.
have
Right.
professional lives and family members, significant others, children. It's all depends on who you're dealing with and how you want to communicate to them, because sometimes you have to break it down to a lower level and then sometimes bring it all the way up to a higher level. But it's
Right.
not about what you're saying, it's how you say it in order for you to get your point across. And then I definitely love making sure that you go back to them, and it goes back to that processing in order for you to know what you said to them, they understand it. If not, then taking the time to make sure that they do get it.
So, out of the 7 C's, which one of the C's do you see as a core value for you?
Courtesy.
Mm,
Yeah, because you want to make sure the person is in a safe space. And that's why I know we're going to lead into the relationship part, but I always say when it's someone that I care about, I
right.
take my time to let them know where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a place of love, because if I didn't love you, I wouldn't want to have this conversation with you. But I'm coming from a place of love, and it's not, no matter how hard the conversation may be, I'm gonna still be courteous, because I
Right.
want you to know that I'm coming from a place of love. Because if I didn't love you, I wouldn't even want to have the conversation with you.
Love that. Damil, talk to us, sir.
This is a great one. So no, I think that they all play a different role. They all
Right.
are part of the same body. So I think clarity is very important, to be extremely precise and clear in what you're trying to say. Your correctness, I think that you could try to be just as correct as possible. It's tough because everybody
Right.
has their own interpretations. Courteous, whew, I think for me that's big, right? You got to
Hmm.
remember where people come from, and you got to remember where you come from. You weren't the best
Right.
communicator at one point. Correct. Concreteness. Yeah, you got to be stern and firm. You got to say exactly what it is, because people will have overthink. They will have loopholes. It is a lot of circles in there. Consideration. You have to be considerate where the other person is at. And sometimes we forget that as we grow in ourselves, that everybody else did it. And that's okay. But you also have to tailor how you communicate to that. And completeness, I think just having them all together is the way that we shape our dialogue, and the way that we shape how we present ourselves within our words, our actions. Because words is not the only way that you communicate. You communicate with your body, you communicate with your actions. So you have to have the complete circle.
All right, love that. Pernell, talk to us, good brother.
Oh man, the one that I take on it that's very important to me is clarity. I want to make sure that what I'm saying that is you're able to understand it and you're able to interpret it. And I'm doing it to my very best to make sure that it's coherent and in an intelligible type language. To me, clarity. Oftentimes we get in our disagreements with people because we're not clear, or we don't have the clarity of communication that we're trying to communicate with them on. Now, how you take the way I communicate with you, that's a whole nother conversation, right? So clarity is always probably my number one thing. Think about this. When you talk to some people and they be like, man, you understand what I'm saying? You understand? Right? But you know what I mean? In a way they ask, am I being clear with you right now?
Right.
So clarity to me is going to be always probably number one. But all 7 of the C's are going to be very important for anyone who wants to communicate effectively to really pick up on. Correctness is very subjective, or I guess situational based. Courtesy, we always want to do our very best to be courteous. But sometimes my clarity, I don't need to be courteous, because at the time you should be clear that I don't want to deal with you right now. So I may not sound too courteous at the time. Right. And concreteness, for us to understand what that's supposed to mean, when your concreteness around how you communicate about the information that you're providing, and to be able to stand firm on it, and your belief in that's important. Consideration, completeness, I think they're all very important for us to have. But if I had to stand on one C alone, it'd be clarity for me.
Love that. All right, there was a comment that Justin posted in the chat, and I'm gonna throw it up. It says, I feel communication needs to be improved more than anything. We have to stop talking social media language and just simply talk to one another. Justin, you are 100% correct and accurate. We got to know how to, as you all said earlier, code switch. The way that you talk to your homies should not be the way that you're talking to your coworkers or to your supervisor or to your client. You have to be clear, you have to be concise, and you have to be firm with what you're saying. So I do agree with you. Thank you so much for dropping that. But now to the major topic of tonight's discussion, as we're going to talk about, let's talk about it. So there were a lot of emails that came to us about understanding the importance of relationships now. And there were a few emails that came in my inbox that says, as a therapist, as someone who interacts with people, what do you see as being one of the major pitfalls around relationships that turns unhealthy and relationships that are not working out? The communication was great during the pandemic because we was forced to be in our homes. And so there were times that many people had to communicate via text and what have you. But this one particular question that came from me, and the person wanted me to keep their name anonymous, is she wanted me to ask this question to the panelists. And she says this: I've been in a relationship for over 5 years. The communication started out great, but now I feel that when I say to my man, let's talk, there seems to be an issue and we end up arguing. Why does this keep happening when I say let's talk? I want to start with Shadisra, then Pernell, then Damil.
Well, it could be a number of things, because it's like, you want to talk. Okay, what do you want to talk about? And it may be where there were conversations that were being had, and there then became a lot of aggression, during that conversation. And sometimes people just get to a point where they don't want to deal with the conversation. Right. So it just depends on when that person says, let's talk. maybe try a different way of still communicating, but not saying like, let's talk, centered around something. Because of course, I always say maybe sit down, cook a meal together. You're working together. Conversations come from that.
Right.
Go for a walk. You're going to talk during that walk. So, and it's just the two of you. So it's different ways that the conversation can be had instead of just saying, let's talk. But I'm thinking maybe something in the past might have happened when that word came up. Because I think when women say that, men get tense, like, okay, what do you want to talk about? And so it could have been a conversation that was had and it just always would blow up. People don't want to deal with that type of, those type of conversations.
Thank you so much for sharing. Pernell, talk to us, sir.
Think about it. I ain't gonna floss. When even my old lady said we need to talk, I'm like, huh? You tell me now. You don't just go ahead and start this conversation now, because you already don't invoke some anxiety in me already, and I'm a therapist, right? So I know how it come about, but we have to understand, and I believe it was said properly right then and there. Like at the end of the day, we have to understand that maybe when we hear that term, it has brought up other tough conversations, and we feel like, man, I don't want to go through it right now. We remember how draining it was last time.
Right.
So you got it's what one of I know we use this terminology a lot. It could be a trigger and make you think about, okay, last time you say you need to talk, this is what we talked about, and I remember how draining it was. Do I want to go through that again?
Right.
So I teach my couples, like, create your own term, right? So create your own term. Not let's say let's talk. Maybe say, hey, look, man, we get home, baby, I need to have a chocolate lollipop with you. Right. And that's your term that, chocolate lollipop in our relationship mean, okay, yeah, we about to have a sit down and talk.
Right.
Right. So because we as a society, we all get anxiety invoked when we hear the term, I need to talk with you, because we see it on movies, we see it on shows, even if it didn't happen in our personal life, we just see it. So now we start to internalize it. So I definitely work with my couples like, hey, listen, man, maybe let's create our own code about when it's time for us to talk. Right. So yeah.
Damil, talk to us. The word let's talk.
Yeah, that's trigger. So I agree with what everybody said. I think the only thing I would add in is the completeness, right? Like I learned in just my past experiences to just how to ease that anxiety of just like, hey, later on I would like to talk about such and such, and give that time to like prep. Most of the times when that happens, it's just like there's been a past experience of something being wrong. So like, hey, let's talk. And then it's like, well, now my mind is racing all the way through. I'm not focusing on anything that I got to do today. It's just, what's up? Because I can't lie. Like Pernell said, when she tell me we got to talk, I'm like, so about what? Like, I start racing like, what did I do? Well, I know I ain't do nothing wrong. So it brings those things. And I think sometimes, depending on who you're communicating with, it can lead to like, we're like, hey, you could have just told me that earlier. You had to leave me going with that all day. But you don't want to make anybody feel worse about how they communicate. So I think that let's talk can be very much a hard word, but I also agree with changing it, creating a different narrative where it's like, hey, we need to go camping, and it's like, oh, all right, cool, I can go camp. I'm down with going camping, or not have it be a negative experience every time.
Right.
I feel like most of the times when we say let's talk, it is a negative experience, and if you can change it to be like, hey, let's talk. Not about me, not about you ain't doing nothing wrong. I just want to talk about you. Like let's get to know us more. Let's set our own boundaries. And when we get into relationships, I want to talk about that part. But like let's set our own boundaries of each other and our expectations of what we want from each other. So let's talk it can get tricky, especially if it goes to a text and that's all you say is let's talk later. I'm about to call you, like we could just do this now.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I just wanted to add in a little bit to the question that was sent to email. And thank you so much for shooting me that email earlier today. One of the other pieces of advice that I would also share is build the communication into your relationships, right? Like just don't wait until something begins to happen. Or you feel in the type of way that something is going left. Have those open, fluid conversations throughout your interactions, whether it's with the coworker, whether it's with the friendships, whether it's with your intimate partner. Don't wait until as we like to say, the soda can start to fizzing let's begin to have those conversations early on. Because I do agree with what all of you all says. When someone says, hey, let's talk, I ain't thinking about no work. I'm not thinking about no session. I want to know what you have to talk about. And sometimes the person that says that, you got to be clear. I mean, you have to be clear and say, hey, I would like to talk about, something, like add in a little bit of extra wording besides just saying let's talk, because then you cause the unnecessary anxieties to take place. All right, y'all. Relationships. The biggest topic of this. Shaditra, what do you think is important in a relationship as we begin to focus on communication? You could talk about healthy relationships, unhealthy relationships. Like, why is communication so key and important?
Well, I definitely want to talk about healthy relationships because I'm a
Good.
component for healthy relationships, because unhealthy can, that's occurring all the time. But we want to talk about healthy, and
Yes.
healthy relationships definitely come from being in a safe space.
Right.
Having the ability to make the person feel safe, that they can come and talk to you, and not feel judged either. So often, with social media, that's what's going on. People are thinking that they can communicate on there, they're being judged, and then that's when unhealthiness comes into
Yes.
place. But truly, setting up healthy relationships when it comes to communication is just making sure that that person knows that they're safe coming to you, no matter what they have to talk about.
Yes.
Because I always say I'm an advocate, and I want to be a resource. So that's how I try to set up conversations when I speak to people, and let them, and my energy too.
Right.
If my energy is bad, then I know I don't need to be talking to anyone at that moment. Like, I need a moment. But
Right.
when I try to make sure that my energy is good, that reflects, and then it allows people to understand, to feel comfortable to come on in and be able to speak and hear what I'm saying. I can hear what they're saying.
Right.
So that's how I feel about communication, and then in a healthy environment at that.
Love that. Love that. There are so many benefits of healthy relationships around communication. Pernell, come talk to us about that. Like, why is it important to have healthy, effective, consistent relationships that involves positive communications?
I mean, I think we all understand why it's important to have a healthy relationship. I mean, we all want that and desire that. The thing is, I think we have to get to a place of understanding each relationship that we have, with whatever intimate partner that we may have. We have to define what does healthy look like for us. We have to define what does healthy communication look like for us. What does healthy interaction look like for us? I think a lot of times we come into our different relationships and try to use a very blanket type method. Like, well, this is what this is how we should do it. And I tell people, I don't do nothing how we should. I'm going to do it how we say we're going to do it between you and I. Right. So let's sit down and talk about this. I tell anybody, any woman I have dated in my life, if you were looking for somebody who text you good morning every morning, that ain't me. It ain't me. Right. But I'm telling you how I communicate. Right.
Love that.
Right. But outside of that, it's just ultimately would you like to be communicated with? And let you know, and we can let each other know if we can meet each other there. Right. So those type tough conversations most people don't want to have. I have so many couples that are coming to my office like, he should just know, or she should just do it this way. Like, when we come in with these shoulda, coulda, wouldas, we already setting ourselves up. How about we come together? I said, any new relationship is like forming a new business corporation together with a business partner. I said, you wouldn't just walk into a business with someone without talking about all the particulars. So that's the same thing about creating a healthy relationship.
Right. Love that. Love that. Damil, talk to us, good brother.
I'm gonna build off of that. So that is extremely true, right? So now I think about Bell Hooks All About Love. And in her book, she says, the reason why people have trouble with love is because they have different definitions. And I think it is very important to take the time out in your relationship to define expectations, your definitions, because what you may think is love, I may not. And now we're arguing on button heads, or what you may consider showing up for you, I may not consider it that way. So I think it is very important to take the time out to talk to each other and say, like, hey, what do you want from me? How do I best settle that? Like, all right, so when we get into, I don't know, tough moments, instead of running from each other, we sit there, we talk it out, and we figure out, like, hey, what's going on? Or like, when something bothers you, say, hey, this bothered me. and give the space and opportunity to let it be fixed or moved. And I think that's hard though, right? That's hard for anybody when it comes to that. So I think treating it like I like the business analogy, and I would say also treating it as if you are teaching a child, right? And to those fellow teachers who are out there, it is it is hard to put something so big and abstract to just put it into one simple thing of teaching a child. I think that's how every relationship should be addressed, where it's like, hey, I don't want to assume nothing. I don't know. I'm gonna tell you how I like to be loved. I'm gonna ask you what you like to do. How do you like me to show up for you when there's instances that are not going well? Say, hey, what can I do better? And how did I not handle this appropriately? How would you like me to go forward with that? But I think it takes a lot of courage to A, not assume. And I think it takes a lot of courage to B, speak up for yourself in the moments where you think that you did wrong. Because a lot of people are not used to, that happening. So
I think that is very key. And I want to ask Pernell and Shaditra this question. And the question is, you are in a relationship, right? But you've been single for the longest time. And now you decide that you want to jump into a relationship that you know is so good. And you've been so used to communicating the way that you communicate. How do we bridge that gap to include the other person on the other end of the relationship? Because I think sometimes we mean well and we have great intent, but because we just been so used to operating as a party of one, that we sometimes forget that the other person exists.
Definitely. I tell people, man, and that's, I think, Thomas, what you just broke down there is interesting. Like, I was working with a client who just started dating after 10 years, took a 10-year hiatus after a past relationship that where there was some infidelity, and started dating after 10 years. And now I was with a new gentleman, and she realized, like, oh, I thought I was healed because I took all that time off from dating. But now behaviors that this current partner is doing is kind of bringing her back to the behaviors of the past partner. And she realized there was still things going on there. But to go to the whole communication of how you go from communicating and being by yourself for so long, and now trying to intertwine your life with another person, and realizing that you guys communicate quite differently. I tell my clients, like, hey, give yourself opportunity to have a learning curve, right? And make those date nights fun, where you can actually like learn about your own communication style. So I normally give my clients a deck of cards that they go home and get to play with these cards and just ask each other a question and just improve their effectiveness of communication together in lighthearted moments, right? And then once we get to those tough moments that's going to come up, how do you respond in those moments, and how does your partner receive it? And then how did your partner respond in the moment? How did you receive it? And then let's bring it in and see how we both interpret it from our own perspectives. Right. So it's just going to be a lot of trial and error. And I tell my clients, like, look at this as for the first trial, like, before we got the iPhone 16 or whatever y'all at, because I'm an Android person here. There was iPhone 1, but it took time for that to get to that development. They added and became better over time. Right. So right now you're in a relationship communication point with 0.1. Maybe get to 0.2 later, right? So that learning curve is very important.
Love that. Shaditra, come talk to us, sweetheart.
I would agree. You have to take the time to get to know someone. It's just like starting a new job. What your skills are, but when you go on that job, it's totally different. And so the same thing is in the relationship. You know your skills, and now you're learning this new person and trying to intertwine them. So it takes time. You have to give yourself grace about it. And if this is somewhere where you want to be, then you're going to make sure that you put in the time and the effort to communicate with that person, whether it be through verbal or going out, listening, just sitting with one another, listening to music, hearing the words, or getting cards and communicating. I like that. What Pernell said, I've done that myself, having the games and, because there's questions you wouldn't think of, and it then opens you up to those conversations, and then that's how you go a little deeper. And as far as getting to know that person, especially when it's been a hiatus of 10 years of dating. But of course you get set in your ways, but if this is someone you really want to be with, you take the time for it. Just like I said, it's a job. It's not a job, but it's work. And if it's worth it, you're going to put in the work and the effort.
Deidre, I'm glad that you said that it does take work. I think we have come into a society where people are like, well, it should just be effortless. Like, there's nothing that we have, anything that all of us have desired in life has not been effortless, right? We got chefs on here. We got people with masters in education. You got that's an effort, right? That was work.
Right. Listen.
I think we have to reiterate that to our the people that we're serving. Like, anything that's worth having gonna take work.
Some work.
So that
and we're still continuing to get to know ourselves. Every day we're changing and learning something new. I just had a conversation. I was out of town and I was talking to a very good friend of mine, and I was just saying about things that I think it's fear. And I think that that's where I'm at. But I had to come to the realization of that. And now I know my next steps on where I need to go to finish processing why I have this fear and why it's been holding me back on something. But I had to come to the conclusion of that. It's just like with therapy. When we start working with a new client, we always say, are you ready for what I do? I say, are you ready for this? Because I can't do all the work. You got to be ready. Like, you came to me. And so if you're not ready to do this work, then I can't help you process. So like with what I said, for years, I was thinking, I'm just going through life, but it hit me. And I said, oh, that's what it is. Like, I'm fearful of this, and I need to understand why. And so my processing is about to start.
I love that. So our last few minutes, we're going to talk about the scamming and the catfishing and the fakes. You all started a dynamic conversation, and it's a great segue into this. People present to us one way, but then they scam and they catfish us into being something else totally different. How do we manage, and how do we go through being able to try to figure people out? Because they will say one thing to us, but then they do something else totally different. And how do you deal with those scammers and those catfishers? I'm going to start with Damil first, and you can give us your last comment, and then I'm going to go to Shaditra and end it with Mr. Bush.
Ooh. In the day and age of Photoshop and social media, everything is interesting, right? So I'm gonna start with the catfish, right? So I've learned that once people feel that you are at a certain level or a certain attractiveness or a certain thing, they want you. But they don't also know what comes with that, right? So it says, like, for example, I like to equate it to school and people. So when you're in elementary school, there's a reason why you're not in middle school. When you're in middle school, there's a reason why you're not in high school. And when you're in high school, there's a reason why you're not in college. And a lot of people don't associate that with people. So, like, there are certain people who you may not necessarily be ready for, but you feel like you want them so bad. It's like, okay, cool, yeah, but you want me, but I'm gonna also make you, use your words. I'm gonna also make you communicate. I'm gonna also check you on things that are not going against my boundaries.
Right.
People are not used to that. They act and put up this front where, like, no, I want you so bad I can act like it, I can learn it. You can't. And that like, your actions after a while will come out. Like, can't. So, like my therapist says, and like I tell everybody, I am openly on the ASD spectrum. And for those who don't know, that is the autism spectrum. And there's this thing called mask. And you have masks that you switch through. And after a while, they start cracking. You can start seeing certain things in certain capacity. And then they start using, their shortcomings to belittle you. And it's like, no, like that. I never said that. I just worked really hard for what I have. And I went through the pain of really deep diving and looking in the mirror of myself. And I think this day and age, especially my generation and the younger, everything comes from social media. And everything is like, this is what we need to look like. This is how you need to be. This is what you need to do. And somebody like me who don't care what any of that says and walked away from society, it's tough. Because then you looked at like, oh, well, you don't care? No, I don't, because that doesn't add up to who you are and what you can do. So I would say
Right.
when you're dealing with a catfish or you're dealing with people in general, just watch them. Watch their
Mm.
actions. Really watch their actions. Watch how they react. Watch how, use intentional questioning to really get to know them and look at. I'm not really a fan of getting to know everybody's past because I can care less about what your past is, but I am a fan of getting to learn your behaviors, your patterns, and your choices because those keep repeating. So I'm looking at your patterns. Like, am I a part of your pattern or did you break it? So my final thought on that would be ask yourself, are you someone's pattern or are you someone's new beginning? And if you are someone's pattern, the chances are it's never going to stop with you.
Love that. Thank you so much. Shaditra, talk to us.
I truly appreciate what Mel was saying because he brought me to the point of what I wanted to say originally of the mask. You can only wear the mask for so long. It will suffocate you. If you are not, it has to come off. So if you're not going to be the real you, and when you take that mask off, then that's the real you. So you can only keep the mask on for so long. So you have to make sure that you pay attention to the patterns. That's another key in my eyes when I get to know someone. It's not the actions, it's the pattern. So actions, people think, oh, they're just talking, and then they say, oh, well, they're action. No, it's the pattern. Pay attention to the pattern because that's longevity of it. Actions, people can act. That's what it is. You can go watch a movie for an hour and a half. That's them acting. But the pattern is what is the key when it comes to catfishing and someone trying to get over on you. And just when you give them enough time, they want to show themselves. That's that mask come off. They can't keep it on forever.
Wow. Any last thoughts?
My last thoughts when it comes to relationships and communication is key. So it's all about you having the opportunity and being in a safe space to communicate with people, and you want to communicate with the right people. Of course, you don't know that until you start communicating with them, but it is always best to have positive communication within yourself to try to get across what you need to. But then if that person is not reciprocating it, then that's not the place where you need to be.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Pernell, talk to us.
When it comes to catfishing, man, I thought about the traditional sense of catfishing. I mean, someone pretend to be someone that they're not.
Yes.
Even for me, something simple as filters. I'm like, yo, don't send me no pictures with you have filters on. I want to see you wholly. And that's the same way I feel about interaction. Let me see who you are. I tell people, like, don't start a behavior that you can't keep up. Oftentimes, people are catfishing unintentionally. Right, they're showing you these behaviors because we all put on our interview face when we're first attracted to someone or trying to get close to someone. But over time, the interview face that you put on is starting to unwind because that's not truly who you are. So it's really imperative for the person that's getting into that relationship with the person and ensure, like, hey, are you truly being authentically you with me?
Right.
And if to me, I tell anybody, if you can't send me a picture, and it's just for anyone, a picture or without a filter, I'm starting to question everything about you. Let me see you. But just to be clear here, honestly, you have to set those standards, ensure that individuals around you, like, hey, just truly be who you are with me. I'm gonna create that space for you. Because I don't want us to start something that cannot be kept up because you catfish me or I'm catfishing you into this relationship together. So yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Bush, and thank you all for being a part of the show. I thank you so much. I really wanted to have the conversation just on a light end tonight about some of the things that we can do. We can improve how we are clear. We can improve on how we can be concise. We can also use those tools that were stated today: understanding, flexibility, understanding patterns and choice. Damil, I think you was very key and you hit it right on the head. Watch what people are doing on a consistent basis. Watch what we're doing on a consistent basis and understand that communication works. It's always evolving, and it is okay to be able to say, you know what, my bad, I did not communicate the way that I should. I thank you all, and I thank my panelists so much for being on the show tonight. I hope you got something from this discussion, and understand this. In order to be able to move forward, we must continue to move those mountains and break those barriers. I thank you all for joining me on tonight, and we will see you next month as we continue the show. And I love each and every one of you. Stay safe. Have a blessed week. And until then, peace out.
Limitless. My heart vast in blackness, defined by our past, persevere through the obstacles, pain and our laughter, but let me get back to what matters. Dap up my brother, no reason to clap him. Uplift my kinfolk, we shooting for Saturn. No one left behind when we climbing this ladder. My skin and the joy make them 1% matter. That fact that the matter. Open your eyes when you look at the mirror and see what I see. Feel all the power that lies within thee. Black kings and queens who we will and shall be. Know that we bleed and breathe royalty. Love with the loyalty glow got me loving myself. Black skin my cover is hugging myself. Live for the mental and spiritual, but remember we limitless. DNA royal, not menaces. Know that we limitless. Brothers and sisters in arms, know the power be